We're going to invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to ask the clerk to call the order, please.
Roll call for the meeting of May 13th. Councilor Eigenman. Here. Councilor Junta.
Present.
Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor Bryan.
Here.
Councilor Shan.
Present.
Councilor Tonto.
Present.
Councilor Vogel.
Present.
Councilor Z.
Present.
Councilor Devlin.
Here.
Councilor Earls.
Present.
Councilor Connell.
Present.
All present and accounted for, Mr. President.
Are there any late file items?
Councilors will see on their desk a number of items. The first would be two items, committee items, from Public Safety, Order 95 and Communication 142. There are matters that are in committee, they just were not in the packet. Also, we have an Order 111 and an Order 111 emergency preamble related to the Kelly School Order in June 2014. And we have a revised Transfer 41 in Budget and Finance.
Motion to waive the rules and accept the late file items.
Second.
So the motion is to waive the rules and accept the late file items. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so they'll be taken up in the regular order. I guess it's time to look at the public comment. While the clerk is getting the book, the clipboard, I would accept a motion to take order number 100 out of order, so that we'll take this up immediately following the public comment period.
So moved.
Is this, and seconded, and this is in order to recognize some of our stellar high school graduates, or soon-to-be graduates. I don't want to jump the gun. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None, so we'll take that up out of order after the public comment period and before the mayor's presentation. We have 4 speakers tonight. I'm going to ask each of you to come individually to the microphone, identify yourself and your street address. Mackenzie Koch. And I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. I've heard it in 2 different ways.
Yes. Hi, I'm Mackenzie Koch. I'm the Director of Development at the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, and I live at 22 Virginia Lane in Newburyport.
Is there any comment you'd like to make about an item on the agenda tonight?
I'm just here on behalf of our 24th annual Structure Series fundraising walk.
Say that exact same thing.
Sorry. I'm here on behalf of our event permit application for our 24th annual Strut for Strays fundraising walk that's taking place on June 2nd at Spencer Pierce Little Farm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen Ryan.
Hello. Eileen Ryan. I live at 350 High Street here in Newburyport, and I am hoping for an appointment to the Human Rights Commission.
Great.
I know you have my, I think you might have my letters and whatnot with you. So I feel very strongly about this and excited to hopefully join. I've been a nurse for just about 20 years, and I think just my experiences would maybe be helpful.
Well,
So-
while you're there, are there any questions from the councilors? Well, thank you for coming, and thank you for your offer to serve.
Thank you.
Mike Olson.
Hello, I'm Mike Olson, 28 Charles Street. I'm here to just mention the Brown School. I hear there's going to be an ordinance put in place by Councilor Zaid to set some of the parameters for the Brown School. I'd like to encourage support for that. I think, I don't know the details of it, but just from what I've heard, it sounds like a very reasonable proposal. It has a good mix of residential, affordable housing, keeps some of the community aspects of the Brown School, which I think a lot of the neighborhood people really want, such as the gym, the playground, the open space park area. So I would just encourage council to consider that proposal, and I think it's going to go to the committee, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion, but I just wanted to mention that up front, that as a resident of that neighborhood and a supporter of Brown School reuse, I think the parameters set forth in that are worthy of looking at, and putting my support behind that. And I just also wanted to mention my wife wasn't able to be here, but she's going to second what I just said. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Nye.
Hi, I'm Katie Nye, and I live at 8 Russell Terrace. I'm here for consideration to be appointed to the Human Rights Commission. I've known about the commission for a long time. I'm pretty much a lifelong Newburyporter, although I started out as a grandchild and then moved in for my adult years here. I work at the Office for Refugees and Immigrants, and it's our job to welcome the refugees that are coming into the state. And I feel like this is bringing it home and doing my part here in Newburyport to welcome people to Newburyport. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for your offer to serve.
Thanks.
That concludes the public comment period. I think at this time, Councilor Zede would like to call some people.
Sure. Motion to take Order 100 off the table.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this has become a kind of one of my favorite things to do all year, which is an opportunity to just take a moment. We have a lot of stuff we do in this room, but just to recognize some academic excellence and general excellence, some students graduating class of 2019. Usually I reach out to the schools and I get back 2 names. This year I got back 4 names, so that was the first surprise of the year, which was really neat. It gives me even more to celebrate, gives all of us even more to celebrate. So what I'd like to do is just introduce all 4 folks, and if you'd just hold on to your applause, then we can bring them up and embarrass them all together at once, if that works for everybody. So,
Do you want to stand when you identify them?
well, if the president's to stand, you have to stand, so that's the rule. And so we have 3 folks with us tonight, and 1 could not make it. So let me introduce the 3 that are here. And so the reason we have 4 is we have 3 salutatorians and 1 valedictorian. So this is the chance to talk a little bit about each one of them. So I'll introduce the salutatorians first and the valedictorian. So Jillian Elizabeth Gray, who's standing right here, has achieved the rank of salutatorian, and I usually ask for resumes, and I could read the whole thing. It's all incredibly impressive, but just a few highlights about Jillian. A plethora of AP courses, bio, psych, calculus, statistics, and so forth. As I mentioned, salutatorian, of course, high honor roll, all semesters. You don't get to be to this level at the end of 4 years without a lot of long nights, I'm sure, studying and working hard. One neat thing is that everybody seems to be a runner, so that's a common thread that we have amongst folks. So Jillian, cross country all 4 years, varsity swim 9, 10, 11, and 12, and varsity lacrosse as well. So I think that's a 3-season athlete, if I'm reading that correct. Lots of community service experience working, volunteering at the Pettingill House, Girl Scouts, and also some employment experience working at different places, including the Central Congregational Church as the head of nursery. Jillian will be attending William & Mary in the fall to pursue a degree in neuroscience and hopes to go on to the medical field, perhaps in a research capacity, if I have that correct. So that's Jillian. Next on my list is Catherine Grace Sheehy, who's standing to her left, my left anyways, her right. And Catherine has an equally impressive resume, also a large number of AP courses, psych, calc, American literature, statistics, and so forth. This is the vice president of the class of 2019, so that's really neat as well. Again, a runner, captain of each sports team each year, so cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track. Also volunteer experience and some work experience as well with the Jimmy Fund and the Newburyport Middle School track program. Catherine will be attending St. Lawrence, which is in New York, and pursuing a degree in psychology is the plan for the fall. Okay, so those are the 2 salutatorians. Eric Copry could not be here tonight due to a scheduling thing, so he's not here tonight. I didn't get his resume, but I just wanted to recognize his name since we're here talking about it. And that brings me to Sam Aquaviva. It's a name I think we know in this room in a good way, which is wonderful. And he's the class president and has spent, also has an impressive career, having achieved receiving the Harvard Book Award and as well as other things, and also work experience, another celebrated runner, and for good reason, and we know that, 3-season captain. Sam, I didn't catch his plans for the fall, so I'm rolling with it here. He can tell us about it. So those are your 4 top academic achievers for the class of 2019. On behalf of myself, the council, the mayor, city council president, I wish you my congratulations. And then if you want to come.
In addition to being a 4:20 runner in the mile, which most of us couldn't do on a bicycle, is headed to MIT in the fall, unless I'm mistaken. Is that right?
Okay, filled in the. I think we've heard of that one. So, so that's it for me. Thank you. Congratulations to everybody. Pictures, if you want to say anything. I also forgot to say, half that applause was at least for the parents, so just so you know, your efforts were not overlooked.
So why don't we, I'm just trying to think get the best up here, stand on either side of the council president. Sure. Up there.
Come on, get the food in there.
Sure. Step up here. I'll take my microphone off. Look to my left. I'll go. Yep. And then two on the left and two on the right. Come on up.
I was happy to grab you. With these guys.
Pictures. Oh, no.
Excellent. And say bow tie?
Congratulations. Good luck. Thanks for coming. Glad you could make it.
Yeah, I'll add to that, especially the running part too. Congrats.
I'm going to receive and file.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Good luck. Mr. President, I'll make a motion to receive and file Order 100. Or approve, or whatever.
Second.
All those in favor of receiving and file, say aye.
Aye. I think we'll move on to the mayor's comment and budget presentation. This is going to take a little while, and I think a PowerPoint is going to accompany her presentation. So.
75 slides.
Yeah.
10, okay. No. Before I start that, I just wanted to say a couple things. This is the majority of my update. Obviously, we've been working very hard on the budget. But first of all, I wanted to thank all the counselors and the public who attended the ribbon cutting today at 4:30 with Governor Baker at the garage. It was a really nice event, and I really appreciate all you being there. We do not have a definitive date for the official opening yet, but we are really close. So our goal is before Memorial Day to that weekend to get it open, so we're really close. So again, thank you. Two things I just wanted to talk about in terms of your packet tonight. One is that I know it's a challenge in terms of when we have projects go out for bid and they come back and they give us all pause. This is what happened with the cupola at the high school, but there was a good reason for it. One is the fact that the estimator of what it would cost was using a lift as opposed to scaffolding, and then found that the scope of the project was just too intensive in order to do it with a lift, and had to add scaffolding plus a 5% contingency, and that's what caused the significant increase. It was 80 grand plus for the scaffolding plus the 5% contingency, which brings us up to about $120,000 gap. You have an initial transfer, what we thought was in budget and finance for the cupola, but but then when these bids came in, we sort of scrambled. The plan at this point is that Steve Burkholm, who is here, and Superintendent Gallagher to ask that the request for this year's grant for the CPA, which is for $84,000, thank you, Steve, that be moved to this year for this project, plus would they be willing to add another $40,000 to make the gap? If that is impossible, then the next would be to tap into the middle school parking lot balance, which there's about $120,000 in there, and then if that doesn't work, then we would tap into the Kelly School in terms of using any gap funding there. So it's rare that we have an opportunity for 3 different sources of funding for a project, but if we do not pass this tonight, the scaffolding cannot be ordered, and then we will not be able to move this project forward this summer. This is very serious. This is the centerpiece of High Street and our community, and we really, if you take a moment and look up at the cupola and see the condition it's in, it needs to be fixed. Please, please give this consideration tonight when you're looking at your budget and finance items. The other I just wanted to mention is that I certainly have been trying to work with the fire chief on a grant, which we didn't get for the ladder truck last year, and all of a sudden this year we have an opportunity where for $1.5 million we get 2 trucks. One of our pumpers, the frame broke. This is a reserve engine that is critical for the fire department, and the ladder truck is 24 years old, and to have an opportunity to purchase 2 trucks for the price of 1 is a really good deal. So I just would ask you, you have plenty of documentation in that, and the chief is here today to help answer any questions you have about that. Thank you. On to the budget for FY20. You have your budget notebooks in front of you. In terms of the general budget overview, this is a 4.4% increase in the general fund, a $70.4 million budget, and as I said, it's a 4.4% increase. The water enterprise fund, it's nice to see when an account goes down. The water, sewer, harbor master, as you know, are enterprise accounts which are funded through fees. And the water enterprise fund is at $5.3 million, and that's a decrease of 1.2%. The sewer enterprise fund is at $7.6 million, and that's an increase of 2.9%. And again, that is because of the $37 million project to renovate the wastewater treatment facility and the additional odor controls we put in. Hence, we need to cover those expenses. The harbor enterprise fund is $514,000, change of $32,000, which is an increase of 6.6%. In terms of looking at the pie chart, in terms of how our proposed spending is laid out, as we've said numerous times, education is the largest part of our budget at close to 60%, and then you see general administration at 3.8, finance here at 1.3, public safety 14.1, public service, this is DPS 4.5, 1.4 for planning and development, social services 3.3, and benefits 9.6. This is our capital debt, which doesn't include schools, which is 2.3%, but I ask you to bring your attention to benefits here and in the school, and when you combine that, you can see how benefits are really taking a big, big chunk of our budget. This is how the school budget breaks out for 43.8%. The vocational school is 1.1. We have students now, increasing population at Whittier, and we have a few students who go to North Shore Tech because of the specialized programs that are there that are not offered at Whittier, and then our capital debt at 4.0%. How do we pay for all of these things? Through our estimated revenue. Our property taxes, as you know, are the largest source of revenue at 84%, which makes up the bulk of the revenue we have to support our city services. Local receipts here at 8.2%, 8%, and then our net state aid at 6.5%, and then our parking fund at 1.5%. This was developed based on the assumption that we will raise taxes to the full 2.5% next year for FY 2020. So what are our major budget drivers? These are no surprises to you. Schools, state funding formulas for schools as well as our local aid have been pretty poor. Solid waste has been increasing employee benefits as well as our contractual increases. So if we look at schools first, we added $1 million for the total appropriation to $30.9 million to operate our schools. Again, this doesn't include benefits and it doesn't include any capital costs. This is an increase of 3.5%, and I'm very grateful to Superintendent Gallagher for really sticking to that 3.5% number, which we really needed that effort this year from the schools after the support we have provided over the past 10 years. We continue to have tremendous financial pressure on special education and a decrease in our choice revenue. We're hoping that the legislature will fully fund the circuit breaker this year, at least get it up beyond 75%, which would be a big help because 30% of the budget is, 30%, Sean, is going to special education now. So some of the things that we've put in the budget for FY20 in the schools, ELL, English language learner, half-time teacher, grade 1 teacher at Brez. Again, these are positions based on the number of students that are entering into the school, and always one of our largest priorities in the school district is to keep our class size at really important level, and it ranges anywhere from like 18 to 22 students on average. Half-time library aide at Bresnahan, 0.5 assistant principal at Mullen. The Bridge program, this is a program for special needs students, and this licensed teacher replaces an instructional aide, which makes a lot of sense to have made that change. An adjustment counselor at the high school. Again, I think you've heard a lot of talk about social emotional needs of students in our schools, and this is why there's a need for this adjustment counselor. Music teacher at the high school, and then adding 0.2 to the Spanish teacher at the high school also. In terms of state funding formulas, again, looking at these budget drivers, we received $4.2 million in Chapter 70 funding, with 2.3 of that going to the charter school. What this results in is that 2.3 is going to educate 160 students, and 1.9 million going to our district to educate over 2,300 students. There's been a tremendous effort on the part of the legislature. There's 18 bills before them to take a look at Chapter 70 funding. As I mentioned to you before, I testified with many other mayors and other municipal leaders and superintendents on the Chapter 70 funding, and we're hoping that we end up, this year we probably won't see, even though there's been increases in both the House Ways and Means and the Senate budgets, which will now go into reconciliation. We probably will see maybe a slight bump up in our Chapter 70 per student allocation, but we're not going to really see an impact until the major changes are made in the Foundation Review Commission's recommendations that are before the legislature to act on those 18 bills. And one of them is a change in the charter school funding, which we desperately need to happen. Next, if we look at solid waste, not much we can say there. You're aware of this. You've listened to Molly Ettenborough and the work that the task force is doing. We can see that solid waste has increased 35.6% in the last 2 years. In your budget, you'll see an $85,000 increase this year. Employee benefits. Again, this year we actually wasn't a lot of anxiety, I guess, about the health insurance renewal because we had a 3.8% increase, which was very low for us because we've at times been fighting over like 9, 8, 7%. But if you look at this pattern, we can't continue to support these kinds of increases in our health insurance. And there'll be a lot more conversation as we move into the next fiscal year about how we can begin to address some of these really difficult costs for employee benefits. Contractual increases, salary benefits account for 67.6% of the budget, and it includes all of the contractual increases for FY20, including a contingency. We have 2 contracts that are expiring this year, firefighters and Teamsters, administrative professionals. So just a couple highlights about the department budgets that you'll see. There's a 20.4% increase in general administration. Again, parking operations is now part of the general fund budget for the 2nd year, and that's where you can see that, that increase there. And again, we include estimates for a cost to operate the garage, and including contingencies for expiring contracts. In finance is a 5.3% increase, again, contractual increases for staff. But one of the things that some of you might recognize is the fact that we've restructured the finance clerk into a purchasing agent role, because what kept happening is that this was attached to the chief of staff, and with chief of staffs being promoted to being town managers and other positions outside of the city, we kept having to replace this really critical role for the city. So it makes much more sense for it to be housed up in the auditor's office. So that change is reflected in the budget. And the finance clerk has shifted to the Council on Aging to become an office manager, which allowed us to make that change. Under public safety, there's a 4.7 increase. Solid waste increases 5.9%, which I already talked about, and contractual increases for staff. Under public services, 7.3% increase. This is something that I have talked about for a while, and I know Tony Fernari have been asking for a while to add more laborers. This is important for the garage, the bathrooms, downtown, and we're adding 2 new laborers to the budget year-round. We've increased a little bit in budget for snow and ice, and also contractual increases for staff. Under planning and development, 27.8% increase, adds a full-time laborer and increases supplies and materials for the Parks Department, and adds $30,000 to the planning budget to fund something we've been talking about for a long time, for an electronic permitting system that would be shared between the building department as well as planning, something that we really need to move forward on. And we've been looking at, we've had 4 or 5 different vendors coming in to do presentations to staff. And under social services, a 2.4% increase, but there is a 2.7% decrease in Chapter 115 veterans benefit due to fewer eligible veterans, contractual increases I mentioned, and also increased funding for the youth coordinator. That's not a union position, but a contracted position. And we talked about the education budget, a 3.7% increase, vocational schools increasing by 13.6%. And that's due to increased enrollment at both Whittier and Essex Tech. Whittier will be in to defend their budget during one of the workshops too. 1.4% in enterprise funds, again, contractual increases. Chemicals are really increasing for both water and sewer, so you'll notice those in your budget also. And then there's a decrease in the capital outlay for the water due to completed acquisitions during FY19. And that sort of gives you the highlight of this budget. I would like to sincerely thank all of the department heads. We began working on putting this budget together in January. You'll notice they have very comprehensive narratives and goals, accomplishments, as well as new objectives for this upcoming year, and have put together very conservative, thoughtful, and need-based priority budgets. So they are well prepared to work with you as you work through each of these budgets during the workshops. But I would also, in particular, like to thank members of the finance team, starting with Ethan Manning. We could not achieve the AAA bond rating and the kind of quality work without the leadership and support of Ethan Manning. I also would like to recognize Julie Langeren, our treasurer, Jill Brennan, our assessor, Nancy Lysick from the schools, who participates in our finance team, and I'm missing, and Matt Coogan, my chief of staff, which again, was instrumental in putting this budget document together. Look forward to working with you on review and passage of the FY20 budget for the city. Thank you for your time.
Mayor, before the mayor leaves, and I know the department heads are here as well, are there any preliminary questions members would like to ask of the mayor or any of the particular department heads who are here before we move on?
Just one question on the contracts that are outstanding for this year. Can you just tell us when you would expect them to resolve? You mentioned two, firefighters and teachers.
started
and the
firefighter.
schools, right, as well, the teachers?
Yes, but those are accounted for in the school budget. We expect the teachers probably end of the month, in June, let's say June.
Okay.
By the end of the fiscal year, we anticipate the school contracts to be finalized, and we've just started the firefighters' contracts, so that's difficult to say. As you know, there's a lot of issues before us in terms of fire-based EMS and raises, et cetera. So there's a lot of work to be done in the firefighters' contract, which we've just started, and we have not started the Teamsters admin contract yet, which we plan to start. They just set a date for next month. So it depends. Sometimes they take 3 months, sometimes 6. Sometimes they can take a year. The last teacher's contract took over a year, but they're moving very well, and I anticipate they should be done. And that would be about an 8-month, 7-month contract process for the schools.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from the councilors? Hearing none. Thank you, Mayor.
And thank you, department heads. I appreciate you being here tonight. Go home.
All right. We're going to proceed to the consent agenda. The clerk can walk us through this, please.
Happy to, Mr. President. The consent agenda this evening consists of the approval of the minutes for the April 29th meeting. There are 3 transfers, all going to Budget and Finance. Transfer 53, free cash, $23,000, to Brown School expenses, same amount. Transfer 54, free cash, $100,000, to fire overtime, same amount. And transfer 55, sewer rehab, $60,000, to sewer plant chemicals, same amount. There's one communication 152, struck for strays on June 2nd. That's to go to public safety. There are 3 appointments. First reading, appointment 100, Laurie Pierce, 15 2nd Street, Amesbury, Chief Procurement Officer. Appointment 101, Katie Nye, 8 Russell Terrace, Human Rights Commission until 5/31/2021. And appointment 102, Eileen Ryan, 350 High Street, Human Rights Commission until 6/1/2021. There are a number of items noted on the consent agenda that are removed by the simple fact of their being on the consent agenda. There are 2 transfers, transfer 49 and 50, and orders 97, 98, and 99 coming out of Budget and Finance. Neighborhood and City Services has transfer 51 and transfer 52. Public Utilities is listed, however, that's been removed at the request of Councilor Zede. Order 96 will not be coming out. And that is the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
Just one.
Councilor Zede?
I just have one question. On the chief procurement officer, now that we're sort of restructuring this, should there be a date when it expires? I mean, historically, we've always done this, and then it's been the chief, so we haven't put a date on it. It's sort of assumed to be whatever the term is of that chief. Is that a statutory thing under state law? Perhaps that's something we can look before second reading, just to see if there should be an end term on it by state statute or some other reason.
What I can tell you is 30B states that we have to have a chief procurement officer designated before we can issue any request for proposals. So this is a statutory designation that you're making. It does not talk about any term limits, however.
Thank you, Ethan. And other questions from councilors? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Let's move on to the regular agenda. First up was the mayor's update. We don't have anything other than the budget, so I think perhaps, and motion would be in order to,
It's already in the,
we already on it?
She gave it 3 first.
Motion to receive and file the verbal update.
Is that second? All those in favor say aye. He was not. Aye. Opposed? Because we will get the slides. Okay.
Mr. President, next we have the Transfer 41 revised. That came in as a late file. That, I think, should be properly paired with Order 111 and Order 111 Emergency Preamble. However, it's up to Councilor Tontar. Take those at the same time. Makes sense to
The
me.
wish of the chair.
yes, let's take Order 111, the emergency preamble first.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilor Tantar.
So, Budget Finance met this afternoon. We, whoops, I'm entangled. We got testimony from Steve Burkholm and the Superintendent of Schools that the condition of the cupola is not good. It's deteriorating. The copper has holes, and that this is the, in terms of capital improvements, this is their top priority now, that their concern is that if it is not addressed this summer, that further damage will be done, even to the extent of the result in damage to the Phase 1 and Phase 2 improvements that were made to the high school. Why is this necessary? It's necessary because in Transfer 41, the original Transfer 41 that came before you a couple weeks ago, part of it was to be funded from a $54.5 thousand transfer from proceeds of the Kelly School in May of 2014, when the council declared the Kelly School to be surplus. It specified that the money be used exclusively for the school department budget and capital expenditures on the Brown School. So the emergency preamble will allow us to put that order from May of 2014, May 19, 2014, before us, so it could be amended. It takes a 2/3 vote, of course. Both will take a 2/3 vote. So now you're just considering the emergency preamble.
Questions, comments, additional discussion? Councilor Agaman.
Yeah, I think this is a bona fide emergency because of damage possible, so I support the motion.
Any other comments, questions this time? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote on this matter. We need a 2/3 to pass.
Okay, it's a roll call vote on Order 111 EP, the emergency preamble, waives Rule 12A and the Charter Section 29B and Sections 1-77. Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
11-1 emergency preamble passes, leaving us with Order 111. That, if I might, is amending the order of 2014 with the insertion of the language, or for the purposes of funding capital improvements in the school department. Submitted, Councilor Tontar.
So a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilor Tantar.
So I already spoke to the restriction. I just read it, the language you have before you states specifically that funds from the Kelly school sale would go just to the school department budget or youth services, capital improvements to the Brown School. The transfer of the $54,500 was surplus, were funds, is resulting from the declaration of the Kelly School being a surplus. It's a school. The intent would result in, is that money that came from a school to go to another school, the high school, and for a much-needed project. So I would ask you to please vote yes, so we can repair the cupola this summer.
Discussion. Councilor Zede?
Yeah, I'm inclined to support. I just wanted to ask if anybody who was on the council back in 14 could explain what the discussions were at the time, if there was any discussion about capital projects for the schools, and how it ended up with this form, just so I can appreciate the history.
Councilor Agaman?
Well, the two sponsors at the time were Kinsey and Cameron, who are both off the council. But my recollection is it was at the time intended to be either to supplement the school budget or for capital improvements at the Kelly School, and that was a deliberate phrasing. But I'm going to support the motion anyway for the reasons that the sponsor gave. It's just at the time, 5 years ago, that's what we had in mind, and the situation has changed. It's perfectly appropriate to repurpose the money to go from one historic building to another, in my view.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a roll call on this matter as well.
So roll call. This was moved by Councilor Tantar, seconded by? Me. Thank you.
Councilor Vogel?
It's a roll call on approving order number 111. Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Bryan?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. So that leaves us with your transfer.
Right.
And now?
So it's actually motion to approve transfer 41 as amended in committee.
I'll second that. And seconded by Councilor Vogel. Discussion.
That's a little bit of a stretch of what we did in committee. As amended from the floor, all right? So I'll do that. So we've had the original transfer 41 that came in on 3/25/19. And that transfer came in after the administration, after the school department had put together an estimate of how much it would cost to do the cupola. They hired an architectural firm to do that. The architectural firm hired Campbell Construction to come in and estimate how much it would cost. And that's where we got the first estimate of $54,000, $108,000, $109,000 in additional funds to do that work. They went out to bid, and the bids came in at $110,903 over the anticipated expense. The reason for that is that the firm that put together the bid estimates had used a lift to look at the cupola, and they had not, they did not think at the time or consider that that would be insufficient. When the bids came in, all three bids said that scaffolding would be necessary to do the work. All right. So the administration, as you heard the mayor say earlier, has three proposals, three possibilities for obtaining the funds. And what you have before you is a transfer of $110,903 from the Knock-Molen parking lot funds. You recall the Knock-Molen parking lot was paved, and There were excess funds of $119,900.87. So the administration is proposing to take $110,903 of that to put to the high school project, bringing the total to $219,903. The additional scaffolding is $80,000, and then when you add the contingency fund to that, you get that amount. So again, the committee voted to bring this before you unamended. So I am amending it from the floor. If someone needs a second, and I am also urging that you vote yes on it.
I'll second the amendment.
Thank you.
This is a proposal that is now before us. The amendment is before us.
Right.
Is that correct? All right. Discussion of the amendment as presented by the sponsor. Hearing none. All those in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is amended. And we revert to the original motion, which was a
As
motion
amended.
to
Approve is amended.
approve. Councilor Zede.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I'm going to support the transfer. I just want to mention a few things that came out in committee that are important to me, just so I can put them on the record. Number one is, I think this is a good example of why it's always good, if you can, to wait for the bids to come in. Gives you a chance to take a breather and decide if you still want to do it. This came in quite a bit higher, I think, for the reasons stated. These are my concerns with it, even though I'm going to support it. One is there's only a 5% contingency. We talked about that briefly in committee. It was said that there's reasonable confidence that we're not going to blow this thing out big time, but it is an old building, it is an old structure, so you never know. So that is a concern. Number two is that Phase 3 and Phase 4 are different parts of the building. So we're not putting up the scaffolding, doing the work, then potentially taking it down, and then needing to put it back up for Phase 4. That was something that was important to me. So they're in different parts of the building. And the last one is that we acknowledged in committee that there is a preservation restriction on the building held by the Historical Society of Old Newbury, I believe, and it was discussed that all this Secretary of Interior Standards are being followed, so there's no action needed from a permitting standpoint or from the PR holder. So I think this is an important project, and I will support it. I just wanted to mention my concerns on them. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilor Earls.
I understand what I'm going to say won't change anything, but I need to put yourself in a different position, that this was your house, and you're having a roof done, and you're having new rafters put in because there was significant damage. And you got a number. You said that number looks good. Contractor comes in and says, I forgot, I had no way to get up there. I need to charge you now to get a lift up in there, to get scaffolding, something. What would you say? It's, well, no, of course not. Your bid included repairing this. I don't care what it takes. That was your number. They even admit that they apologized, that they thought that they wouldn't need scaffolding. This is errors and omissions on their part. It's not us. We're the only one not to blame. The architect could be held to blame because they should have said, are you sure you're going to get up there? The contractor should certainly be to blame. They do that work. We don't do that work. We assume that that number was the number. So we're the innocent ones. And now our fear being held to the fire because it says, you don't do it now, the cupola is going to fall down in a year. Where does that leave us? So you're right. There's no recourse here, really. We are being handcuffed. The taxpayers are the complete innocent ones here. If it was your house, would you just roll over the seat and say, no problem, charge me another 50 grand of profit and cost? That's what we're getting here. I don't think we're getting this at cost. We're getting this at profit and cost. So they apologized, but what does the apology really mean? We're getting hit with this.
Further discussion? Councilor Augerman.
I admit, it didn't occur to me that there was profit in this, too. That is disturbing. So, I mean, for the record, I have to second what Councilor Lurch said. If that was an error made by the bidders, we really shouldn't be giving them profit on that. But again, gun to our head, the high school is 85 years old, and the cupola is even older because they moved it from the mill to put on top of the high school. There we are.
Councilor Duncan.
Yeah, I apologize if perhaps it wasn't clear. Campbell Construction was contracted by the architectural firm to help develop the costs of the project. And that's how we came up with the original cost, all right? It was subsequently put out to bid, all right? And then when it was put out to bid, all three companies that bid on it, including Campbell Construction, said it can't be done without scaffolding. So that's the, so it's not, I mean, it's not, the error wasn't made by companies making the bid, oh, we forgot it. The error occurred on the level of the architectural firm estimating the cost of repair and not seeing that it needed scaffolding. First point. Secondly, Campbell Construction and the other two bidders use subcontractors for the scaffolding. So it's not clear to me that, maybe Steve, you can help me out here, that Campbell is making any profits. I think they have to pay $80,000 for the scaffolding. And the other two bidders were higher than $80,000 for the scaffolding, if I'm correct.
Could you join us at the microphone, please? This is Mr. Berger
So I'm
from
not
the
sure
School
that,
Department.
there is profit on it. But
So, yeah, the contractors go out to the scaffolding companies and ask for quotes. I happen to know that, because I spoke to Campbell about this after we got the bids back, that they got quotes that ranged from $80,000 up to $200,000 for the scaffolding. So yes, they added the $80,000 into their bid for the scaffolding, plus a contingency in case the project lasts a little bit longer than expected. And, you know, I think their overhead and profit line is based on a percentage of their bid. So there might be a little bit additional profit in it. I can't say for sure whether there is or not. I didn't get that much detail out of them when I spoke to them.
All right. Thank you. Additional questions or comments from the councilors? Councilor Zede.
I'll just respond to the Ward 2 councilor's question. I mean, I don't think there's any secret. It is kind of embarrassing, frankly, what happened in that the company that estimated the cost then bid on it and realized that they made a mistake. That's pretty embarrassing. It's actually further embarrassing because they were involved in phases 1 and 2, so they've actually worked on the building before. With that being said, what we discussed in committee is that, you know, Campbell came in at $375,600 total, Crocker at $536,000, and Olson at $398,000. So Campbell was still the low bidder at that rate, and Mr. Bergholm assures us that they're a good company and they're worth working with despite this error. So I don't know what else to say but that.
Further discussion?
Hearing none.
I'll call for a voice vote. All those in favor of the proposal as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Present.
One present.
Present?
Yes.
You?
No.
I'm not present.
At-large councilor.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it was Councilor Earls who's present. Okay, where are we, Richard?
We are at appointments.
At appointments, and we have first readings. Would you walk us through them, please?
We have second reading, actually, of two appointments. Appointment 97, Peter Blawis at 61 Pleasant Street, Unit 717, Human Rights Commission, 5/1/2022. And appointment 98, Thomas Getz, 36 Broad Street, to the Human Rights Commission, 5/31/2022.
Motion to approve collectively on second reading.
Second. Okay, we'll ask you a discussion
Hearing none, we'll take a roll call.
on this matter.
For appointment 97 and 98, Councilor Eigenman. Yes. Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes. Not in doubt.
That leaves us with a number of orders. The first order is,
Mr. President, may I make a motion to take 101, 102, and 104 collectively? To start.
102.
Point of order. What did we do with 100? Did we do a
did it
receive and
already.
file?
Receive and file.
We did a receive and file.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion is to take these three items together. Is there a second to that motion? Second. Seconded by Counselor Devlin. Discussion. But I would actually ask the clerk to read those three first before discussion.
101 is handicap parking space at Pleasant Street at Unicorn Street. Order 102 is 15-minute parking space at 92 Pleasant Street. And Order 104 is a drop-off space on Market Street.
Motion to refer to public safety collectively.
Second. Well, the previous motion was to take these up collectively.
Oh, I'm
I think we have
sorry.
to dispose of that motion first.
Sorry.
Further discussion on taking these up collectively? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion to refer to public safety collectively.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I think Counselor Devlin got to you first. Oh, Counselor Junta, I misheard. I'm sorry. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, they are referred.
Mr. President, motion to take 103, 105, 107, 109, and 110 collectively.
Try again. Moved and seconded to take these items collectively. I'm going to ask the clerk, before we vote on anything, to identify those orders, please.
Order 103 is parking garage fees, in-street permit, sorry. Order 105 is the FY 2020 budget. Order 107 is the fire apparatus loan order. And was it 110?
109 and 110.
109, Order 109 is acceptance of Chapter 32, Section 12, 2, Sub D, Survivor Allowance. And Order 110 is also Chapter 32, however, Section 101, Surviving Spouse.
Discussion of this matter that is taking them up collectively. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion to refer all collectively to Budget and Finance, with one exception, 105, which is also Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Did I hear?
You did, hold on, if you would, Mr. President, for 1 second, while the clerk catches up.
I couldn't hear you, Richard.
I just need to write down what we just did.
No. All right.
You can always go back and watch it.
I can.
You can look at the tape.
Thank you, Councilor Vogel, for that suggestion. 107, 109, and
And
110.
105 is council.
And 105 is also a Committee of the Whole.
Committee of the whole.
No. 105 or 106?
Yeah,
105.
The budget.
Did that wrong.
106 and 108.
It does leave 106 and 108.
Okay, which are still on our table. I believe we're at Order 106, are we now?
106, Mr. President, is the intermunicipal agreement animal control services, and 108 is the acceptance of the Farmer George Brown School.
Let's take up 106 independently, please. Is there any interest in Order 106?
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Second. Doesn't it?
Moved and seconded to Budget and Finance. Discussion.
You know, I just say, I'm just doing that because it does have to do with money. It did go to Budget and Finance last time.
I did, okay.
Yeah, I know.
Committee of the Whole, if people want to talk about the WinStar.
Hearing none. All those in favor of referring this matter to Budget and Finance, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Motion to refer 108 to Planning and Development.
Second.
One moment. Ask the clerk, did we dispose of Order 107 yet?
Yes, we did.
Okay, that's
Budget and Finance.
And the motion is to send 108 to,
Planning and Development, Mr. President.
is there a second?
Second.
Second, Councilor Vogel. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Finances.
And I think we're done for the orders, aren't we?
We are.
Ordinances.
Ordinance 32 is submitted by Councilors Eigenman and Junta and it is amending the zoning map pursuant to a list of parcels on Exhibit A, parcels proposed for the AgCon district, and there are a suggested rezoning to AgCon, a long list of parcel numbers that actually goes on for 4, 5, 6 pages.
Okay, what is the will of council?
Motion to refer to planning and development.
Second.
Moved and seconded to planning and development. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, ordinance 33.
Ordinance 33 is the zoning amendment to the former Brown School parcels.
Motion to refer to planning and development.
Second.
Moved and seconded to planning and development. Discussion? Councilor Zede.
Just a brief comment. I think actually a resident who spoke said it pretty well. The residents of Ward 1 would really just appreciate your review of this. Take a look at it. I've got a lot to say about it. Tonight's not the night, but in light of the council's actions last week, moving forward on other things, the neighborhood would really appreciate it if we could get to some sort of resolution on where this thing is going in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's moved. Ordinance 34.
Ordinance 34 is an amendment to the salary of elected officials. Paragraph A deals with the mayor's salary, B deals with the councilor's salary, and C deals with the school committee salaries, including vice chair and council president. And that's submitted Councilor Connell.
Motion to refer to budget and finance.
Moved and seconded to budget and finance. Discussion? Councilor Z.
I just wonder if this is really more general government than it is budget and finance. I mean, yes, it has to do with money, but at the same time, it's, I don't know. And it's a charter year too, so that's an interesting part of the discussion.
Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I read the rules, you know, the descriptions in the code, and I thought general government, but it didn't seem to fit. So that leaves budget and finance.
I would just offer an editorial comment as a sponsor. I have no problem with it being in budget and finance if that's the will of the council. Councilor Eigenman.
Yeah, I was looking it up while we were talking. So the responsibilities of the Committee on General Government, that I agree that it doesn't really fit. So it probably needs to go to budget and finance. General government is a catch-all and includes sort of miscellaneous departments like city solicitor, registrar of voters. So I support the motion of budget and finance.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
I hear 2 noes.
3
3
noes.
noes. The chair's in doubt. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
This is ordinance 34 referring to budget and finance. Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
No.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
No.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Matters referred to budget and finance.
Where are the items? Let's start with budget and finance.
Yes. Motion to approve. I got it right? Transfer 49. And I'm going to move that we divide this question. So I would move that we first consider the $20,000 transfer to the ticket and permit expense.
Second.
Got to read the thing up.
You know, I think the clerk should read the item, and then
No.
the appropriate mechanism would be to move
Right.
to approve, and then subdivide it in committee on the floor, but...
Okay, so
in your committee
withdraw my motion. I move to approve transfer 49.
And would the
Sorry,
clerk
no,
just
withdraw.
read the item for us, please, so we know what we're talking
So
about?
the entire transfer right now, before it's bifurcated, is transfer 49, parking fund, $54,500. Transfer 2, parking facility, $34,500, traffic flow study. Transfer 2, ticket and permit expense, $20,000. That's a payout of a 3-year contract with ComPlus Data.
All right, and it was seconded by Counselor Khan, I believe.
Yep.
All right. Now, Counselor Tantar.
Motion to divide the question into the two transfers, one to ticket and permit expense, and the second is to the parking facility.
Second.
All right, seconded to divide them, and then we'll take up the individual transfers individually. Discussion of the division of these two items into two different votes. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They're divided. Let's take up the first one.
Motion to approve the $20,000 transfer for ticket and permit expense.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I couldn't tell if it was Counselor Devlin or
Z.
I'm sorry.
He did it.
Discussion, Counselor Thomas.
Yeah, Mr. President, first of all, we're dividing these two because we divided in committee. This measure had a 3-0 vote for recommending approval. The second was a 2-1 vote. So that's why we divided it. On this $20,000, it's necessary because the city had a contract with ComPlus Data for a 3-year contract term, and the third year is not necessary. The city has contracted with Passport to do the permitting and ticketing, and the third year of the ComPlus Data contract would cost the city $60,000. The parking clerk negotiated with ComPlus Data, and they agreed to terminate the contract for $20,000. This creates a more efficient system, just going with one company, Passport. It's a superior company. It also offers further potential savings. For one thing, ComPlus Data charges the person who receives tickets, and there are about 18,000 tickets a year, $3 per ticket. And even if the person who gets the ticket comes before the parking clerk and it's abated, they still collect that $3 fee. So Passport does not. I know people don't think that the parking clerk, because of his demeanor, thinks about people out there and considers them, but he strongly advocated that we relieve people who get tickets of this $3 fine, especially when the ticket gets abated, right? Passport also charges $3 rather than $3.22 to the city for processing the tickets. And so my estimate is that this would be maybe another $6,000 in savings, but I'm not really sure. But all of us in committee recommended that you approve this transfer.
Further discussion? Counselor Zede.
The only thing I wanted to add is that we did discuss in committee that this is a final donezo settlement. There's no other things. I did ask in committee if the original contract came through the council and if there's anything we would have to do to break it. We were told that the administration would break it, but all I wanted to say is that this is it. This is a clean cut. We're done. And whatever agreements need to be executed to make that happen will be done. So,
Thank you, Counselor. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of passing this item, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is done. Now we have the second item.
Motion to approve transfer 50, which is for the police.
the second
half.
49.
I'm skipping right over it. That was done intentionally. I want to bring it up at the end. Motion to approve the transfer of 34.5K for the parking facility traffic study.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Khan. Discussion. Counselor
Yes,
Tantar.
this is a transfer, again, out of the paid parking fund, and it's necessitated because the planning board mandated that there be a traffic flow study from May until September after the garage is opened. And the garage does not get an occupancy permit unless we are under contract with someone to do this study. It is my understanding that this Planning Department can very quickly get that contract signed if we improve this transfer. Secondly, it's a good idea, I think, to have a traffic flow study. I kind of agree with the planning board in their mandating it. So this was a 2-to-1 vote, two voted to recommend approval. Two of us, the at-large council and myself, voted yes. The Ward 1 councilor voted no, and I'll let him explain.
Further discussion? Councilor Z. I'll just explain my dissent briefly. First of all, you know, this really should have been included in the parking garage budget. That's the first thing. So this is an overage of the garage, admittedly a small one, 35 grand on a multi-million-dollar project. But what's actually a little bit more frustrating to me is that it's another 11th hour decision, it seems like, as has been the case with the garage since the start. We're trying to do things quick. We just got a Phase 2 traffic study back from the last one that I don't think anybody's read except for the page with the rotary at the bottom of Green Street, which Meta Buzz saw on Facebook. So, you know, my point is that, you know, this has been on the books with the planning board decision for a couple of years. And the right thing to do is to at least get to a point where there's usefulness to the study. We're spending another 35 grand. That's coming from the rest of the parking system. And I'm not really sure that we're prepared to use it. And I believe that that's where the real overage will come from, is that we really didn't make any plans. I've actually heard arguments that the garage is going to make traffic better, which is ironic because there's nothing that says that. We don't have any studies that say that. Not sure we have studies that say it'll make it worse either. We actually don't know. And I think a lot of people don't know that there are two entrances to the garage, one on Merrimack, which can access the first floor, and one on Titcomb that can access the upper floor. So we still have a lot of work to do on this, and that was the reason for my objections. I just don't want to throw another 35 grand down the hole without feeling confident that we actually are going to have some usefulness out of it. And I can appreciate, I was sort of told that it would be my fault the garage couldn't open, but I can accept that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Other councilors? Then I come back to Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, I neglected to mention that the budget for the garage was put together before the planning board met and mandated that this study be done. So that's why this, otherwise it would have been included in the budget.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. No.
2 noes. Budget and Finance, are there other things you'd like to bring out?
Yes, now I can move to approve transfer 50, which is transfer within the police department to
Would the clerk read the summary?
reduce the HVAC.
From the police department, fuel, oil, $11,000, to maintenance of buildings, same amount, $11,000. The HVAC system in the dispatch area has failed, needs to be replaced.
Yes, it has. Did you get a second on that?
Second.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. Discussion, Councilor Tantar.
Yes, you know, the HVAC system failed last year. They've kind of pieced it together. It's they pieced it together till they could put the money together for the transfer to replace it. The HVAC system will be replaced. It's a transfer from police fuel. Fortunately, until recently, fuel prices were lower than had been anticipated. So there is money there to transfer to replace the HVAC system. This was a 3-0 vote in committee.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's transferred. Any other items?
Motion to approve order number 97.
Is there a second?
Second.
And would the clerk read the item, please? Describe the item for us, please.
The City Council appropriated $44,000 for the purchase of a new transportation van, whereas the Trust Fund Committee approved the same. $6,000 from the William Horton Trust for said van purchase. Now therefore the City Council accepts with gratitude a gift from the Friends of the Council on Aging in the amount of $25,000 for the purpose of purchasing a new transportation van to be used by the Council on Aging. Furthermore, the funds are appropriated to the existing capital account for the van purchase for a total appropriation of $75,000. Submitted, Councilor Tantar.
Very well. Councilor Tantar.
Yes, the committee voted 3-0 to recommend approval. This replaces a Merrimack Valley Regional Transit Authority van that we shared with Salisbury that was at the end of its life. You know, we already appropriated $44K. The Horton Trust donated $6K, and the $25K was raised by the Council on Aging through gifts to make up the $75,000 cost for a van that will be used exclusively by in Newburyport.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Made.
Motion to remove Order 98.
Moved and seconded. Would the clerk please describe this item for us?
So the City Council authorizes an increase to the spending limit for the following funds: recreational services, original 370 to 490,000, electrical inspector 60,000 to 85,000, gas inspector 40,000 to 50,000, solid waste 80,000 to 100,000. Submitted, Councilor Tantar.
Discussion. Councilor Tantar.
So once again, the committee recommends 3-0 to approve. Electrical and gas inspectors, that increase is necessary because of more activity. Solid waste, also because of more activity. Recreational services, we dropped the middle school drop-in center reserve, so it's got to get soaked into this one. So that accounts, plus a minimum wage increase, plus cost inflation accounts for the increase. You recall that when we set the limits on these funds a year ago, we noted that we might have to increase them if we approach the limit, and that's become necessary.
Further discussion? Councilor Z. I just wanted to acknowledge that the rec services increase is quite substantial, and we talked about that a little bit in committee. We sort of were told that there's really nothing out of the ordinary or anything like that. This is just this is a busy time of year, and that we have over the past, but we will revisit these during the budget process to try and wrap our heads around it better. Thank you.
Fine. And did the chair report on a vote of the members of the committee?
I did. It was 3-0.
3-0. I'm not sure I heard that. Thank you. Councilor Eigenman?
Yeah, the recreational one was the only one that jumped out. I guess my question is there a surplus in their account? Do they expect to carry a surplus, or is this just balancing $190,000 in and $190,000 out?
Councilor Tantar, would you like to respond?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, wait a minute, it's, right, current balance is $273,817. So we increased that, we had set the limit at 370, and we have to raise it to 490. So the money is there to raise it, right? So the problem is we set a limit that will not fund their programs for the year. So we have to raise the limit. But right now, the current balance is $273,817. They have expended $364 to this point. So we set the limit at 370, so they're close to $5,000 to the limit. So if we don't increase it, they can't spend.
Councilor Zede?
Just to help, if it helps, they've brought in 494 this year, so the 490 doesn't exceed their revenues for the year. I would also just remind everybody, we did have a lengthy debate about some policies relating to revolving funds. I think it was last year, and we set some limits on what can be carried over, and we also set some limits on how capital expenditures could be done. That's really the reason that I'm comfortable with this. So they're not going to overspend their revenue already, because we're going to 490. They've already taken 494 and in for the year, and we've got, 1 month left in the fiscal year, and it's a pretty busy month for them. So,
thank you. Very well. Further discussion?
Mr. President, there's a motion to approve on the floor. Who's the second on that?
I'll second.
Sure.
Was it Councilor Khan?
Councilor Khan did.
It may have been. It slips my mind as well. Thank you. So let the record show that it was Councilor Khan. Further discussion?
Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Counselor, is there anything else from Budget and Finance?
Motion to approve order number 99, gift for band uniforms.
Second. Moved and seconded. Would the clerk describe this item for us, please?
It's a acceptance of a gift from Port Performing Arts in the amount of $2,190 for the purpose of completing the purchase of new uniforms for the high school band.
Great. Discussion.
The committee unanimously recommends that we accept this generous gift from Port Performing Arts.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we accept the gift, and I hope maybe the clerk's office could be instructed to send them a thank you note. I don't know
I'd
whose
be happy to, Mr. President.
name would, who would, perhaps the chair can identify the individual who headed this item. Very generously. Education, is there anything now? Oh, by the way, excuse me, was there anything else in Budget and Finance?
We are done, thank you.
That's what I thought. Education,
Nothing to report, sir.
nothing to report. License and permits.
Motion to remove Communication 151 from
Motion to
committee.
move 151. Seconded by Counselor Tantar.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is it seconded to approve?
we didn't remove it yet.
We've already moved it.
It's automatically out, so he's moving
It
to...
actually wasn't. If you read the consent agenda, it wasn't automatically out, so I want to remove it. And then motion to, if it's been removed, I'd like to approve it.
Very well. Motion to remove has been seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion to approve.
Second. Thank you. Discussion. Counselor Earls.
This is actually a renewal, and it came to us because it is a variance, but it has been active for the last 2 years, so they are looking for a renewal. As far as I know, and the committee voted 3-0 to accept it, as far as we know, there has been no issues involved where this has been located. There's been no public comment, there's been no disturbances.
All right. Further discussion. Counselor Seed.
Is this just, I apologize, trying to refresh my memory, is there a time on this, or was that by ordinance? I think it was 2 years because it's a renewal. I just wanted to clarify that.
Counselor Earls, would you
Originally, it was discussed 2 years.
Communication 151.
Again, I think it will be 2 years, or until a business finding directory is established, or a wayfaring. I know there's a couple names for it. So until that's done, this would be allowed to stand, literally stand.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Neighborhood City Services.
Was that one no, Mr.
One no. Neighborhood and City Services.
Mr. President, motion to approve transfer 51.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Counselor Seed.
So I'm just acting on behalf of Chair O'Brien, who wasn't able to make the meeting last week, so I just chaired in his place, just so you know why I'm talking. So transfer 51 is the first of two that are coming out tonight. Just to brief a little bit about the transfer. First is the source. This is both of transfers tonight actually are coming from the salary line item. There have been some changes in personnel, and this has created basically some leftover money between this and the other one. About $18,700, so $7,700 comes here. We did ask if there would be sufficient funds to cover salaries for the rest of the year between these two transfers. The answer was yes. Again, we're heading into the home stretch of the fiscal year. As far as the destinations, there are three. First one is library audiovisual material. The state actually prescribes a certain level of spending that needs to be done. As you can see, the line is already in deficit by about $3,200. This is $3,700, so it brings us back to level and then leaves just a hair of cash there in case there are any last minute things. So that's why that line is there. Next one is admin expenses. This is primarily to fund training. There's going to be a conference in Framingham, I understand that some staff will be attending. Again, that line has been essentially is at zero, $340. So this basically funds another $2,000 into it to be used for that purpose. And finally, supplies. This says paper, materials, paper. Generally, what we were told is the materials really are barcodes and other library-specific items. And again, that line has gone into a deficit, so this brings it back to a balance. It was a 2-0 vote in committee to support it, and I would ask you to do the same. Thank you.
Councilor. Further discussion?
Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Good, anything else?
Motion to approve transfer 52.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. Counselor Zede.
Sure. So this is an $11,000 transfer. I've already told you about the from account. Now, the to account's a little bit more complicated on this one. So the library is a 38,000 square foot building. It has a fairly complex HVAC system. That HVAC system is, give or take, approaching its useful life, let's call it. So typically you would estimate that a life of a system like this is about 20 years. We're getting there, basically. And the city does maintain 2 contracts for maintenance of it. One is for the physical aspect, the boilers, the chillers, the air handlers, and the other one is for the controls. And currently ATCO is the vendor that is the contractor that does maintenance on the on the boiler, chiller aspect of it. So that's just a little set the stage for you. To this transfer specifically, basically what we're coming to is uncertainty about how that the system will function properly this summer. And obviously, being a library, both for the benefit of the human beings that will visit there and use it, as well as for the benefit of the materials that are kept there, keeping the building cool is sort of not optional. So there are 3 parts. This transfer is based on an actual bid from ATCO, and there are 3 parts to it. The first one is to replace the contacts on the chiller, which apparently are arcing and causing problems with the system firing off. We're told by Mike Bartlett, who was here, that this part actually may be done in-house for a savings, but they've asked to keep the amount, which this line is $9,500, in case that doesn't come to fruition. The second one is replace the heating elements in the dehumidifier. This primarily serves the children's area. That's $2,900, and then the oil change on a compressor, $4,600. This hasn't been done since 2004. If you're doing the math in your head quickly, that adds up to more than $11,000, which is this amount of the transfer. The total amount is actually $17,000 on the bid. 11 of it is coming from here, and the remainder, the 6 or so, is coming from state aid. So every year the library receives state aid. It's about $24,000 a year, 2 payments, 12 apiece. So basically you have 12 left. The second payment just came in, I guess, and about 6 of that will be used to get to the top of this project, to finish this portion off. And then the other 6 is actually, or 7 or so, I'm rounding here, is slated to be used for a more proper assessment of the whole system, to bring an engineer in and figure out what the deal is with the system. As I mentioned, it is sort of approaching end of life sooner rather than later. So to bring these folks in, have them really look at, this is an engineering firm, and really say, it's salvageable, it's not salvageable, it's junk, it's not junk, here's what you'd have to replace, here's how long we think you can get out of it, and so forth. We spent a lot of time in committee debating whether we were throwing good money after bad. Respectfully, I'm not sure we came to a good conclusion on that, but what we do know is that the library needs to be cooled this summer, and this is about the only way in front of us to get there. We did talk at length about, look, what if you did some of these things, but not all of them? What if you waited for that assessment to come in? But the reality is what we came to committee is that replacing the HVAC system in the libraries is a 7-figure project, and we talked about $500,000 or more was just a back of the napkin spitball number. Don't hold anybody to it, but it's not a $50,000 project. It's not a $10 million project either. So the point is that we're not just going to come into $500,000 in the next 4 or 5 months. The administration said they were interested to see what the result would be of this assessment. So it was 2-0 in committee with those, reservations, I guess. My colleague can correct me if I'm wrong. And the only thing I didn't mention was we had the at-large Councilor Earls, myself, Matt Coogan was there, Ethan Manning, Giselle Stevens, who's here, the library director, if I missed or messed anything up, and Mike Bartlett from facilities. All in attendance, and it was a helpful meeting. And the last thing that came out of the meeting, just to throw it out there, is that as we've grown in physical building infrastructure, there was discussion about at some point it may be logical to have a human being that has HVAC knowledge, because we keep bringing in all these folks to manage all. We just had the police station for 11, so sometimes having that expertise could be beneficial. That's neither here nor there. It's not in the budget. It's not anywhere. But just thought I'd mention it to you since it was mentioned to us. 2-0. Thank you.
Further discussion? I would ask, Ms. Stevens, is there anything you'd like to add to that report?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of this transfer say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Very well. What's next?
That's it for neighborhood and city services, Mr. President.
All right, planning and development.
Motion to remove appointment 99, Stephen G. Delisle.
Second. Do we need to remove?
Mr. President, excuse me. I'm going to recuse myself.
Motion to approve.
Go ahead. Motion to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded by Counselor Genta, I believe, made it first. Discussion, Counselor Igerman.
So by rule, these appointments go to our committee. We had a noticed public hearing. We give the applicant an opportunity to speak, and we ask them questions. No one from the public wished to speak. The committee was satisfied with the nominee, and we recommended him for approval 3-0.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. President?
Should this be a roll call, Rich?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. President. Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yeah, correct.
Councilor O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin has recused himself. Please note for the record. Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Council President.
Yes.
Appointment passes.
Counselor Igerman, would you recover our wayward?
I will. I have to recuse myself on conservation restriction anyway, so Larry's going to take over.
Oh, very well. One in, one out.
Musical chairs.
Yes. Okay. All right. Great.
Okay, we are now at ordinance,
Communication 115.
communication 115, yes, I was looking at
So,
the,
motion to remove communication 115?
Second.
I think it's just a, we don't need to remove anymore.
Oh, you do?
True. No, it's not out. So it is a, you're right.
Motion to approve.
And seconded by Counselor, is it Tantar? It's not out.
It has to be removed.
Yes.
I'm doing my best.
115, was this not in committee already?
It was not in the consent
Now the
agenda.
consent agenda be taken out.
Thank you. Thank you for the correction. Motion to remove, and seconded by Counselor Tantar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Counselor Genta.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this has been with us for some time. We sent it to Boston to have a solicitor take a peek at this, and we have heard back from them, and we are ready to move forward. I just wonder if Director Port would like to give us just a quick update from Boston.
Director Port?
The attorney just asked the attorney who has actually prepared this document to certify that they are the only owners of the property, just for record purposes. They're providing that to us. This is basically a conservation restriction required as part of a conservation permit. So it was agreed to with the Conservation Commission that they would restrict part of the land to no further development as part of that permit process, and this is consistent with that. So we recommend approval.
Thank you.
Further discussion or questions of the planning director? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very well. Could Councilor Earls recover our colleague, Councilor? What is your to the bill?
Mr. President, there's nothing further from our committee. The amendments to demolition delay is not coming out.
Thank you, Councilor. Public safety.
Yes. Everybody, I have to remove these. Motion to remove order number 95.
Order number 95. And seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, Counselor Devlin.
Yes, this was, the proponent is the Councilwoman Khan, who came and presented at our May 2nd meeting. Also present was John McCone, from the Publisher of the Daily News, but also on the Merrimack River Watershed Council. They summarize that there's 7 bills before the state legislature and 2 at the federal level. The 2 that are in the order before you are the best. They send the right message and will get passed. There's 68 co-sponsors, including our state rep and our state senator. There's notification process in the bills. You sign up and you'll get notification. And then the plants must send out the notifications of a discharge within 2 hours of the discharge. And then there's some improved monitoring, to name a few things. This was recommended for approval 3-0.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Khan.
Yes, great, thank you. I also just wanted to point everyone to the memo, which has a little bit more of the details. And at the end of the memo, there's actually the language of the bills that are the ones that I think would be best for us to support and provide our collective voice on an issue that we've been hearing so much for. So I really hope everyone already had a chance to read the memo, and if there's any questions, I welcome anything now before we collectively send our voice to the State House. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Counselor Zede.
Thank you. I just, I wanted to lend my support. This is an important issue for my ward, being at the sort of end of the line, if you will. Just a couple thoughts, a couple things that were discussed last week at MRBA or a couple weeks ago. One is there seems to be a new movement to include notification in the DEP permitting process and NPDES, I can't remember.
DES, yes.
NPDES, yeah, that's the one. So that's something to look at. That's been discussed, and it seems like DEP may be using that as a tool to drive notifications. The second thing is, during the budget process here in the city, I hope that we'll have an opportunity to talk about testing ourselves at the end of the river. So notification would help us, because at least we wouldn't be chasing testing at times where we don't necessarily need to. But a lot of residents have contacted me about having the city do more testing. There are points of testing that are done maybe more statewide or even federally where they go and test, but most of them are on the outside. They're on the ocean side, and obviously this has a tendency to get collected up in the basin, in the bowl, and so forth. And the final thing is just a Scrivener's thing. Under the be it resolved, I think now we probably want to change it to that on this 13th day of May, just because now the time has passed a little bit, so that it can be correct if we're all going to sign at the bottom of it.
Is that an acceptable amendment to the draft before us?
Right, because we have a dash, so yes, that is acceptable, right?
Yeah, just April to May too, but yeah, it's just minor stuff. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? I might ask the sponsor if it might be appropriate, and if you would consent to drafting a letter in support of this particular legislation that's being considered by committee. I believe it's the Committee on Natural Resources, although it's been renamed. Might appreciate getting some feedback from our council on this matter, on some of the legislation that's before them.
Sure. I'm not
Sure.
sure.
I think the president should write it and she'll sign it.
Second.
Such enthusiasm. I will. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for volunteering me, Tom. Anything else coming out of the...
Yes. Motion to remove communication 142, the Newburyport Spring Festival.
Discussion. Hearing none. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to approve.
Second. Seconded by Councilor O'Brien, I believe it was. Councilor Devlin.
Yes. We had Elizabeth Hurley from the Chamber, Chris Sullivan, former mayor, Chamber Board of Director, and Kevin Riley, who's an owner of Partridge and a Bear Tree, come and discuss the Newburyport Spring Festival. I communicated with them that the Ward 2 councilor had received over the last couple of years a number of complaints or maybe negative feedback with regards to some of the festivals that we were having and the size of the festivals. Ward 2 councilor had also, gone and met with these people and taken some notes and also received a petition. The discussion we had was, although they are a small, or perhaps a small minority of business owners, that what could the chamber do in considering these events? I said they sort of had a double whammy in that some of them probably aren't chamber members either, so that they can't advocate for themselves at the chamber, but that does not mean they can't advocate for themselves here. Some of the complaints were that the tents block the store view, crowds block entrances, tents carry similar products, and then I just pitched it to the people that anything that they could do to alleviate. I will have to say, out of the 3.5 years that I've been doing this, I will take Kevin Riley here giving testimony anytime. He is an excellent guy, that's all I can say, and very well reasoned and very well thought out and very compassionate and sympathetic. So some of the issues where they can't really move the events to parks or higher up State Street because it defeats the point of what the chamber is trying to do, which is bring people to the areas where all our businesses are. So, and Kevin thought that would be a big problem for him. He really, really feels that these events help, they might not increase his sales that day, but they help introduce the familiarity to his store and get people in his store. And he said it's up to him then to imprint, when they come in, imprint his store in their mind. That one wasn't workable. They did say that thought goes into product placement, and they try not to place similar products being sold in the tents in front of the businesses. And they said they would continue to do that as well. And I said make sure that even non-members have a way of relaying their complaints to you. I asked about smaller size, and they said actually it has gotten smaller, and former Mayor Sullivan actually said, well, it used to be big enough that we closed Pleasant Street, and we got complaints about that, so we responded and we don't close Pleasant Street anymore. They also used to have tents on both sides of the streets, and now it's only on one side of the street. Which then led us into a discussion. I can't remember whether it was Kevin or somebody, or perhaps I suggested it, but Kevin jumped all over it. It was that they change sides of the streets every other year, so that if you've got tents on your side one year, well, you get tents on the other side. And he said actually that would solve a big problem, because a lot of the people on the other side do complain that they don't get the benefits of the tent. So it sort of sounds like a little bit of a you can't win scenario, but it was that type of conversation that I really appreciated. And then Mayor Sullivan and the Chamber Director Cousins agreed to meet with the Ward 2 councilor. So just one last thing about these events. Again, Kevin Riley is very compassionate, but he said he's got a place here and he's got a place down in Salem. He said in Salem, where they have hotels, he doesn't need festivals. He said he has a great business because of the people who are staying there overnight. He said here you really do need the festivals, but he also can see where some people, feel that they're too much at once. But he said we have a lot of family events that don't draw shoppers, and these types of events with the tents and the goods, they draw shoppers. Those people are here to buy stuff. That's why they're coming to look at all these tents, and they buy stuff from him and others as well. So it came out 3-0.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Councilor Vogt.
So full disclosure, I'm a business owner in town. I walk the streets as a business owner quite frequently and speak to a lot of businesses. My businesses are not particularly affected one way or the other. They're obviously affected, benefit from events and so forth. But I will tell you that when I walk on Pleasant Street and I talk to the businesses on Pleasant Street, they feel like they're left behind. So it's a damned if you do, or you're damned if you don't. If you bring some of these tents up onto Pleasant Street, you're going to get the complaints of there's too much going on. If you don't bring them up there, you get the complaints that we're being ignored. So I get both sides of it. Again, full disclosure, I'm fine with it, but it would be nice to be able to figure out a way that the entire downtown community gets involved in these events, and they're not just isolated to the Bullnose or to Inn Street, but they come on up to Pleasant. I know particularly this end of Pleasant Street down here is affected by them and would like to see more activity directed towards them. I do have a question. I'm sorry I didn't make the meeting. The sentence, the parking spaces as listed above for the chamber members, et cetera, what does that mean? I'm sorry if I may direct that directly to the...
You may. Ask some clarification.
Excuse me, Councilor, what line are you on?
Right there in the last line of the text.
From the letter from the chamber.
Yeah, from the chamber. Parking spaces as listed above will be for chamber members, nonprofits, and crafters to have booths. Oh, the parking spaces along the, oh, was that in there? I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, this wasn't. She brought it, at our request, she brought this. I didn't submit it. It's the parking space, it's the tents will have chamber members, crafters, and others, and those are along the parking spaces on the western side.
Thank you, I did not see that. I did notice, thank you for letting me comment. I did notice on the insurance liability that the workers' comp section B has expired on 4/23, or will expire before the event. Or expired.
I'm sure the clerk will note that, but...
Expired.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the committee for airing out the grievances from the petitioners. And I did speak to the chamber head, Frank Cousins. He was very solicitous. The idea, really all that the petitioners wanted, as I understand it, was for their issues to be addressed, and they were. And I'm very grateful. I think Sheriff Cousins has been good about being reasonable. We really raked him over the coals last year on the Riverfest, and he inherited that, and I thought he did a really good job on that. A good job with a difficult event. So I circled back with some of the merchants that signed a petition. They're satisfied that by alternating the sides of the street and so on, we're going to get to a good place. Thank you.
Councilor Zede.
I just have a brief comment. My only comment is that, I think we're going to have to get to some point where we resolve this Inn Street thing. So Inn Street is a park, and every time I see one of these, I asked last time about the jurisdiction of that. And, the parks fees ordinance that you may remember from many moons ago is probably going to come out maybe at the next meeting or soon thereafter. And so we have to resolve this. I mean, the Inn Street is a park, at least the part of it that is a park, and the rest of it is a street. So I don't know what to do. I'm just saying that we're going to have to figure this out because it's been a constant source. And the challenge is that so many events downtown, obviously, it's a central place. So it's natural to think that, the Bullnose, Inn Street, Pleasant Street, State Street. So something to think about. I don't know. We'll find out.
Further councilors? Councilor Vogel.
I just want to make sure that the clerk was aware that we received this. There's a portion of it has expired. So
Workers' comp portion.
Right. So
I have that, yeah. We will call them on that.
Is that satisfactory, Councilor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That's it.
That's it for public safety? Thank you. Public utilities?
Solar credits coming out the 28th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Rules Committee?
Nothing tonight.
Good of the order. Councilor Khan?
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to let everyone know on May 22nd at the Senior Center, there's going to be the Newburyport's 3rd annual community iftar. We're catering food from Mr. India, and it's a good discussion. There's going to be a speaker, and I hope everyone can make it. So that's on May 22nd. And those watching, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from good of the order? Council Contact.
I would just like to note that for the public, this Thursday, budget workshops will begin, and we will have department heads come in. I would urge members of the public out there to attend. This is one of the major things we do is we approve a budget, and this is where you find out where your hard-earned tax dollars are being spent. So I urge you to.
Anything else for good of the order? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're done.